So today on our Tech for Business podcast, Alex, our Assistant Director of Services, is joining us to discuss questions IT admins should ask their business leaders. So Alex, just to start us off, why are we even having this conversation? I mean, why are IT admins in the room with their presidents, their CEOs, their C-levels?
It's a great question, and it's one that probably doesn't get thought of a lot. Why would we need to be there? You're not up high in the food chain or anything like that, but so much runs through technology and leverages us that a simple change or policy or procedural change directly impacts us. And being in that room helps us be able to advocate and know what's coming and be prepared for what to look for.
Definitely, definitely. I kind of think, your team is a little bit boots on the ground. You got to keep connection with that frontline people. So I do have 5 questions I've brought today that, I think IT admins should be asking. And I'm curious as to what you think and, if you would add or change anything. So the first thing is sort of long-term planning. So looking 6 months ahead, a year ahead, where do you foresee us going? And why is this long-term planning question important for IT members to be a part of?
Yeah, so it's a great question for the fact of, um, I'm going to touch a little bit on budget. I imagine that'll probably be one of your questions you'll ask going forward, but it really comes into the long-term planning, lets us know what infrastructure we need 6 months from now to accommodate the goals of the company and the objectives that we have to a year from now. Are we starting to position ourselves into maybe the cloud? Do we want to go cloud oriented? Well, that takes some infrastructure out of our scope. So maybe we don't put our budget there. We don't forecast planning there for that. Being part of that long-term planning 3, 6 years out is so important because it dictates how we're going to structure everything on the back end, and being involved in going, hey, that's a great idea. Do you know it's going to take these 4 components to make that happen? What might look good on paper and be sold from a software developer or a company doesn't mean that it's not it's turn a knob, click a button, and it goes live. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we'll have to get probably provision, because let's be honest, now we're moving more and more to technology, to leveraging the internet and pushing the computers further and further in the technology that we have, which then directly impacts us. It may help accounting. And why do we need to be involved if it helps accounting? I totally understand, but I can guarantee at some capacity it's going to involve us. Um, and just being involved in those conversations just sets everybody up for success.
That's great. I love saying, that communication, setting people up for success. That's so important. And you did guess my next question, which is budget. Along with that long-term planning, what is the budget available? How do you want me to prioritize the budget? And I'm curious as to, you kind of explained it a little bit, but why are IT admins involved in accounting, in budget? Why are you in that conversation?
I mean, there's a lot of aspects of the budget that impact us. Personnel, our day-to-day costs. It sounds silly, but keeping the printers running, toner, stuff like that. Things that you just don't think about is budgetary items that people just take for granted. Our staff, future projects, that involves budgetary things. If we're going to the cloud, we might not need server infrastructure, which is amazing. That's one net cost. But when you go to the cloud, it's a monthly cost most likely. So you're trading a big upfront cost where you finance out for 5 years to a reoccurring cost. That dictates the budget drastically of how we need to forecast and make sure we are involved in going, hey, cool, we're going to the cloud. While that takes X out of the equation where we don't have to worry about this every 5 years, we have this every month. Are we in line with our budget, and are we prepared for that? And then that corresponds with just replacement of computers and stuff like that. What is our life cycle replacement? That dictates the budget. Are we 3 years, 5 years, 8 years? Where are we at? What are we gonna do for our budget replacement? And being able to be involved in those conversations. So again, the key thing that you're going to learn from us is on the end is we want everybody to be successful. We want everything to be up 100% of the time as much as you guys want to. That's why we want to be in the room because no one likes to spend money on IT. We get it. It's not the pretty budgetary item that anybody likes to see, but unfortunately, we run through everything. So, being part of that chair, being in part of that in that table, is so important for us.
Definitely. And you kind of mentioned things like going to the cloud and projects and planning. And that's a little bit of my next question, is asking IT admins the importance of asking, you know, what are the roles and responsibilities? At what point does this project get handed off and who does it get handed off to? And why is that an important question to ask, those clarifying questions?
Yeah. So the reason why it's so important to know who's on first and who's on second, couldn't help myself, it was right there, is just for that sheer fact of we're gonna maybe stand something up, get it about halfway, but we're not gonna be the one that's gonna configure the accounting software. So who are we handing off to? Are we handing off to Timmy or Susie? Are they gonna take over this part of the job? And then are we coming back in? It's just kind of setting everybody up for success that, okay, we have this. It's also timeline related too. So our first phase is going to be getting all this squared away. It's going to take us 3 months. Then it's going to get handed off to this department. And then leadership, the CEO, everybody like that knows that this project of implementing X tool or whatever is going to take 8 months. But 3 months from this team, another 3 months, and then a couple months to go live, and then we do the cut. Like all that stuff kind of dictates to who's doing what step and coming back and forth. And that's kind of where that, like, for lack of better words, project manager. And sometimes we don't have that in the budget. So that's where we kind of wear multiple hats, where we're kind of managing the project. But that communication is going to be so key that everybody understands, oh, hey, at this point, we are done until the day goes live or something like that. So,
Yeah, definitely. So stepping a little bit away from, projects and planning and that side, let's talk a little bit about your day-to-day, which could be working with customers, it could be cybersecurity, data security, privacy. A question IT admins should bring up to their C levels is how can we ensure data security and privacy? And my question to you is, why are you involving the C levels with that? That's your job in your field. Why are the presidents and CEOs involved in those conversations?
yeah, it's really just it's kind of could be on the same thing about the projects and stuff like that. Is just making sure we're on the same page, make sure we both understand that what are we compliant to, making sure we understand, make sure they understand what we're compliant to, and that sometimes incur costs. And the security focused world that we live in and how prevalent security is, I mean, you can't turn on the news without hearing something nowadays, is how do we make sure we don't hit the 5 o'clock news?
Definitely. And those roles and responsibilities on security is so important as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah, 100%. So are we compliant to PCI or HIPAA? Okay, we
Yeah.
are. Okay, that means it requires these guidelines. And it's going to be so important that, it's not to, it's okay to say we don't know or to make sure, hey, I believe as the IT administrator that we have to be held to this. Not saying that you should or should not know, Mr. CEO, or anything like that, but do you understand or do you agree that we are compliant to those standards? Or are you aware of what we need for our insurance and stuff like that to be protected?
So my last question that I think IT admins should be asking their business leaders is, what support can you provide me with my team? And my question to you, Alex, is why is that advocacy important when it comes to your team? And what does that kind of mean?
Yeah, so how to support the IT team, the IT department, and why it's so important is we touch so many facets of everything that happens in the company. If you know it or not, we are so integrally involved in everything, and that also involves staying current. Where advocating for our engineers to stay certified, if it's once a year or everything like that, and trying to keep us educated. Technology is never sleeping and it's always evolving and always changing. Keeping us on the leading edge of what is going on only helps the company. I know it's another expense, that wonderful budget, but I promise it's one of those things that come back, and it also reinvigorates the team when you invest back into them because they feel like you got their back. You want them to be successful. You want them to grow. And it only helps you as an organization to grow that department by supporting them financially, educationally, and everything like that. And, the other potential is if you want to maybe look into going into a facet, well, let's start up a demo environment. Yes, there's a little bit of a cost factor into it, but you get two great kickbacks. You're getting to see the future, and you're letting those engineers, who I can tell you are going to have the biggest smile on their face when they get to hear they get to go play in a new test environment and everything like that, because they get to go cut their teeth in new technology, and it's just going to make them more invigorated and bring back into the company.
Definitely. That's great. So when we talk about these questions and these conversations, how often do you think these conversations should happen? And then if you have any advice maybe to an IT admin or manager who's never had this conversation with their C-levels, how do they even bridge that gap?
Yeah. So I think at the minimum it should be once a year. And it should be prior to budgets, like, a quarter before budgets, so you can get your budget together, because it's important for you to be prepared for this meeting. And it's not to be defensive, it's not to come combative in the meeting, it's just to become um, prepared and educated so you know what to prepare for. How to prep for that meeting? Just, you know what you need to do for your day-to-day operations. You might not know the dollars and cents, and that's okay. That's part of this conversation. But don't be afraid to just go and, knock on their door, put something on their calendar, and have that meeting. And even if it's like a quick 15-minute or at first, and to say, this is what I want to meet with, what information can we make this fruitful? I know it's going to be scary to come into that meeting for your first time if you've never had it before, because it's the CEO or something like that. If you don't have a CTO or something like that, that's kind of helping you advocate for this stuff. Um, so just come prepared. And like I said, come with an open mind. If you haven't been involved, that means it's not that they haven't thought of it. It's just maybe, or anything like that, or they don't want you in the room. It's just sometimes we're forgotten sometimes in IT, and it's okay. So, speak up for yourself and just say, hey, this is what I'd like to talk about. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page and we're setting up for success for the next year.
Love it. Love it so much. That self-advocacy, the team and the success of the company, everyone working together. It was great. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. It
Yeah,
was
thank you.
really informative. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions or a topic you'd like us to discuss, reach out to us at info@cit-net.com or head out to our website, cit-net.com/podcast. And we'll be back next week with an all new episode.